Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist turned mindset and high-performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. My guest today is Dr. Joseph Antoun, the CEO of L-Nutra, aka the CEO of Longevity. Dr. Antoun has led the business to $100 million in funding, 8 figures in revenue, and an impressive month-over-month growth. So I'm excited to hear more about his work and how he stays healthy while building his business. Welcome, Joseph, and thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm all yours. Try to steal all the answers for me.
I will totally do that. Before we dive into today's episode and listen to all the amazing tips and insights my wonderful guest has to share, I have a challenge that I'm really excited to share with you all. I call it the Feel the Magic Challenge, and it's all about enhancing mental performance while reducing stress at the same time. For those of you who have followed the show for a while, you might remember me talking about Magic Mind earlier this year. But for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Magic Mind is a mental performance shot designed to boost focus, mental clarity, and productivity while reducing stress. It's packed with nootropic mushrooms, adaptogens, and vitamins C and D, so lots of good stuff all in one tiny bottle. And I already know that I love the product from earlier this year, but I thought it would be fun to document my experiences over 30 days of drinking Magic Mind every day, in more detail this time, and to take you guys on a journey with me. I mean, who doesn't love a good challenge, right? So I've been drinking one Magic Mind shot a day for the past 3 days, and here's what I've noticed so far. For me, the quick increase in energy level and mental clarity are the most noticeable early features. When I have more energy, it's easier to focus throughout the day and to get things done. I drank it alongside my usual coffee, and it gives me that extra boost, but without the jitters or the crash later on. If you're curious, check out Magic Mind at magicmind.com/ClaudiaG and use code ClaudiaG20 for up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases. Let's do this challenge together. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's interview. So, Joseph, why is longevity such an important and interesting topic to you, and how did you end up in this field?
I think longevity is, well, and at least healthy longevity. Let's say we want to live long and healthy. I think this is a very common, probably target objective for many of us. And there's a funny story there. When we started talking and studying longevity, years and years ago, we did actually one survey in the market. We wanted to see, is there a longevity market? We asked people, do you want to live long? And 60% said no. And then when we asked, we went back, we were shocked. We went back, and the trick was, people, when they think live long, they think about their, suffering parents or suffering grandparents. They're living sick long, because unfortunately, this is what we have built. We have built a sick healthcare system where we're okay to be sick for decades before dying. And then when you go back and you survey people, do you want to live healthy long? And this is where you get, 80-90% positive. So a lot of us definitely don't want to leave this planet, soon, and don't want to be sick at the same time. So the word that we coordinated years ago is called Healthspan. So you want to live healthy long, and healthy longevity, I think, is a very important personal matter for most people.
That makes total sense. Now, you're the CEO of L-Nutra. What's the company's mission and vision?
So L-Nutra, L is for longevity, dash is through, Nutra is nutrition, longevity through nutrition. And we wanted to build the big questions, or two big questions we wanted to answer through our mission was, where food is the only product we put in our body every day of life, all
True.
our life, every
Mm-hmm.
day and all our life. How come there is no company that has said, let me put evidence-based science behind nutrition so that we tell humans what they should eat to live long? I mean, that's like the ABC, right? We spend billions and billions on drugs, we spend trillions on healthcare, yet there's one product that we put in our body every day of our life, and nobody has researched what we should eat to live a healthy long life. And we left it to a combination of marketers and scammers to tell us what to do every 2 3 months. The 3 months with a new book, you should do keto diet. The other 3 months, you should do carnivore. The other 3 months, you should be plant based. The other thing. So, unfortunately, no one company has wanted to sacrifice 2 3 decades to do science behind nutrition and to help people live a healthy long life. And this is what we exactly did. We put 18 universities together, all the way in the US, Stanford, USC, UCLA, Mayo Clinic, all the way to Europe, University of Charité, actually, and University of
Important.
Berlin, yeah, and University of Genoa, University of Palermo, University of Leiden in Holland. We put 18 global universities together and university medical centers, and we decided to do the same way we do it on drugs, on medicine. We decided to do randomized clinical trials on food to learn what to eat and to help people live longer. And this is how our Prolon, Prolon, the Prolon business unit under L-Nutra, which is how can we bring food that is pro longevity and help you live a healthy long life. The other part of our mission is we said, okay, people also, when they're sick and they're chronically sick, say diabetes, cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, they also eat food every day. How come we never put enough science behind that food to help them get to a remission? How come food hasn't come as medicine yet and to help patients, achieve a cure or a remission or at least regress from their disease? And, a lot of companies say food is medicine and food is medicine. What they mean is they're giving you healthy ingredients so that you don't get sick, but they're not giving you true treatment to reverse diabetes or cancer or Alzheimer's. We decided to be the first trailblazer and put true science behind nutritional formulations that could actually help a diabetic patient get out of diabetes. It could help and support a cancer with going through the treatment, the chemo on cancer, to help an Alzheimer patient be well nourished. So this is the mission of our company. If you're healthy, we want you to stay healthy long. That's our Prolon part of the business. And if you're sick, we want to turn food as medicine to help you increase your chances to get to a cure or a remission.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And I couldn't agree more. Like, I am a cancer survivor. And something that always stood out to me was when I was at the hospital, the food was just the worst. And you thought, like, how am I supposed to get better if you get that crappy food at the hospital? I never understood the concept behind that. It's like, why? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and Claudia, it's way beyond that. When you have cancer is the fastest growing replicating cell and then organ, right? And it needs food. So you can play with nutrition to starve cancer before chemotherapy and get it hit and decrease the chances of cancer escaping the chemo. You can play with nutrition to protect the normal cells of the body from the chemotherapy side effects. You can use nutrition to rejuvenate immunity to better attack cancer. So there's a lot of intervention, not just to eat healthy, but how can we bring the right nutrition to boost immunity against cancer, to starve the cancer, and to protect the normal cells of the body from the side effects of the drugs? This is what we do. And it's phenomenal. It's not like, eat plant-based, healthy, gluten-free. Yes, check. We should do all of that. But how can we go beyond, and how can we turn food as part of the treatment?
I'd love to learn more. So what are the key takeaways that you have learned through your research?
A lot of our research has focused on two nutritional, if you want, pipelines. One pipeline is how can we mimic the benefits of fasting with nutrition? Can I feed you a special formulation of food that your body doesn't recognize? Meaning you think you're fasting, but when you're eating, we call it the fasting mimicking diet. And why we try to mimic fasting? Because fasting imposes a special crisis on the body. And it's like, since we're talking about entrepreneurships, A lot of entrepreneur, one big challenge they're going to face is sometimes they have lack of funding or they have no revenues. It's the body when you're fasting, it's like you don't have funding or revenues.
Yeah.
And that put a special pressure. It's a pressure that then pushes the entrepreneur to go and restructure the company, right? It's like, okay, I cannot have anything going wrong. Otherwise, I'm going to go bankrupt. I got to go fix sales, marketing, supply chain. I got to go and fix. And this is what happens to the body is when you're fasting, especially, it's not the intermittent fasting phase where it's just 16 hours. It's actually when you cross 2 and 3 and 4 days. There's a special crisis that goes on the cell, and the cells are rejuvenating to be at their best performance to survive. This phenomenon of rejuvenation as a response to fasting, we call it autophagy or self-rejuvenate. And it won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2016. So it's a big scientific phenomenon. And because nobody wants to fast, no entrepreneur wants to sit without funding for a long period. Nobody wants to fast on water for 3 or 4 or 5 days. We developed the fasting mimicking diet. So now you can eat the product, eat a food, a very healthy plant-based food. We called it Prolon, and your body doesn't know you're eating, but actually you are eating. So you're nourishing your body. It makes it much easier to do, and it puts you into this rejuvenation and cellular reprogramming mode, which then optimizes, corrects, audits the body, and therefore helps you give you a better chance for a healthier, longer life. That's one of our biggest focus on research. And we love that because at the same time, when you put the body in check and the cells are fixing, guess what? You have diabetes, you have cancer, you have Alzheimer's. The body is trying to fix, right? The body is into, let me check everything going wrong and try to deal with it. And so it's a tool. The fasting mimicking diet is a tool for longevity. If you're healthy, rejuvenate your cells. And if you're sick, it's a tool to better deal and better manage their health condition. We have another pipeline of nutrition, which aim at what we call slow down the aging process. At the end of the day, and this is what medicine missed, right? Going back to my background, I started in medicine. I'm an MD, PhD, and with a couple of masters on top of those. And I felt that, I'll be one of the best doctors trying to cure patients. But I was never able to cure a patient. I was just giving them pills for the rest of their lives. If you're diabetic, I'll give you 1 pill, then 2, then 3, then 4, then insulin for the rest of your life. If you have blood pressure, I'll put you on 1 drug, then 2, then 3. I mean, it was frustrating. If you have cholesterol, you take a statin for every day of every month of every year. And I wasn't getting into cures, and this is why I left that segment to go build this Nutri technology company that we called L-Nutra. And so one of the biggest learning I in transitioning from medicine to nutrition was the importance of aging healthy from the inside, the biological age. And why is that so? At the end of the day, 90% of us will die out of 4 diseases. You and I are going to die from one of these 4, okay? With a 90% chance.
Not you and I. We are doing the things.
Cancer, you escape to thank God. So cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and cardiovascular disease. These are the 4 big killers. Guess what? They're age-related. This is what medicine missed. They're age-related. They don't come from, you don't get Alzheimer's at age 20. You're not going to get your first cancer in most cases at age 20. You're not going to get diabetes type 2 at age 22. Cancer is a little bit different story because it's a probability of replication of the cells multiplied by the mistake of becoming cancerous. This is why you still get it a little bit at a younger age. And you're not going to get, dementia and or a heart attack. You're not going to do a heart attack at age 26. You're going to have those around the age of 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. So aging makes the body more prone to mistakes and disease and takes down the ability to heal and to correct via stem cells and autophagy, etc. So if you slow down the biological age of the body, if you're, say, 50 and we can keep you a little bit around 45 and 43, you just gained a good 6-7 years of healthy life. And this should be the biggest focus of a health system. In my opinion, the unit of measurement of health should be the bioage of the body. And a lot of the preventive medicine should be focused on how can we slow down the biological age. We don't want to be 70 when we're 70. We want to be 60 when we're 70 from the inside, right? And so this is why the second pipeline of nutrition technologies that we have is aimed at slowing down aging. And a lot of the aging boost comes from nutrition. Every time we eat, we age a little bit. This is very important. This is why calorie restriction is a key intervention to live long, right? And this is why, unfortunately, if we carry overweight, your life expectancy wouldn't be that long. Because every time you eat carbs, insulin increases. Every time you eat protein, insulin-like growth factor increase. These are hormones of growth. These are hormones of aging. So every time we eat carbs and proteins, we're a little bit, tiny bit moving forward and towards aging. So we develop a full pipeline of food that doesn't spike insulin or IGF. And therefore, when you're eating our nutrition, our longevity nutrition, you're not paying the price of, or you're paying a less of a price than if you ate otherwise another food when it comes to biological age. So we try with Prolon 5-day fasting mimicking diet to reverse the age of the cell, rejuvenate the cell, and with the other pipeline of nutrition to slow down your biological age through nutrition.
Sounds good to me. So everything that really addresses the underlying cause and not just the symptoms is always a good thing to do, I'd
100%.
say.
That's the only way to truthfully support people to live a healthy, long life or support a health condition to be reversed.
Yeah, so when someone is on your fasting mimicking diet, what does a typical day look like? Like, what do they eat throughout the day?
They receive a box to their house. It's called the Prolon 5-day fasting mimicking diet. It's a white box. You open it, and you have 5 smaller boxes. Each one has your food for the day, for the 5 days. And then you open the day one, and I'll give you day one is 1,100 calories. So it's and the other days are 800 calories. So this is not a fasting by starvation. It's a fasting by nourishment. And it took us $36 million in doing the research, and over 13 years to get it. Yeah, and 18 universities. And we just started actually our 40th clinical trial on the fasting mimicking nutrition. And now we've been awarded over 134 patents on it. This is a biotech. Think about a Pfizer or a Lilly or Novo Nordisk on drugs, on medicines. This is how we are on nutrition. We're a evidence-based clinical trial driven company on nutrition to prove solid health outcomes. So day one, 1,100 calories. Day 2, 3, 4, and 5 are 800. You have a morning bar. We try to make it very consumer friendly. So you have your bar in the morning. You have soups and other elements for lunch. You have a snack. It's a choco-based snack in the afternoon, and soups and other components also for dinner. And you have 2 supplements to give you your vitamins, minerals, and the other supplement is your omegas. You also have a drink, a very special drink to keep your basal energy throughout the day. And you have teas and you can have a coffee with it. So it replaces your food and drink, and you don't need to think about cooking or doing anything else. A lot of people bring that as a positive. It's like 5 days I don't have to buy food, I don't have to cook food, and I'm actually rejuvenating my cells and my metabolism.
That sounds cool. But maybe we should also define some associated terms just to reduce confusion. Now, can you define and explain what intermittent fasting is, what caloric restriction is, and also what maybe time-restricted feeding is? How are these concepts similar, and where do they differ?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, actually. So let me zoom out, because there's a lot of confusion into all this, right? So calorie restriction is when you eat less, you restrict calories, right? It's not about timing, it's about the amount. So if you restrict calories, typically 20-30%, you're in calorie restriction. And there's different layers there. There's a low calorie diet, and there's a very low calorie diet. And a lot of countries, they classify food as VLCD, very low calorie diet, if you're below 800 calories. So if you restrict by 20%, 30%, you're a low calorie diet. If you restrict by half or more, you're a very low calorie diet. But that's on everyday basis. And it applies for what we call chronic diets that have lower calories that you can do on a longer on a longer time frame. Fasting is a different category. Fasting is about timing. Fasting is when to eat. Okay, so and you have two types of fasting. You have intermittent fasting, which is between 0 days to 2 days, so 0 hours to 2 days. Anytime you skip food for 1 hour, 10 hours, 1 day, 1.5 days to 2 days, you call that intermittent fasting. Anything above 2 days is called prolonged fasting. And why the 2 days? Because the first 2 days, you have enough reserves in the body to compensate for the lack of calories, right? And let's go back to talk a little bit entrepreneurship and leadership. Imagine you're the CEO of a company, or you're an entrepreneur, and you have a company and you have no revenue. Suddenly something happens. It's like the body with fasting. Well, you say, okay, I have money in the bank. I can go to my checking account first, and then my savings account, and then I can ask for a loan or deplete my credit card. The body does the same thing. This is the intermittent fasting level. The body says, okay, I have glycogen for the first few hours, and then I have fat that I can break down. So the checking account is the glycogen. The savings account is fat. And then I can ask the liver to do neoglucogenesis and dump more calories in the blood. And this is what happens in day 2. And this is my credit card, or this is my loan. I get a loan from the liver to dump even more calories in the bloodstream. So now that you deplete, going back, you depleted your bank account. The bank is not going to give you more money. You're going to come in and say, I got to restructure my company. Unfortunately, I have to cut some budgets. I have to maybe let some people go. I have to refix things. And this is autophagy. This is prolonged fasting. This is after day 2, where we're moving from a metabolic reset to a cellular rejuvenation phase. And this is, for most people, it happens between day 2 and 3. And this is why we call it the prolonged fasting period. Now, within intermittent fasting, within the first 2 days, there's different categories. There's the category of what we call time-restricted eating, meaning you're within the first day. You're not fasting more than 1 day. You're within the first day, and you're restricting the time of eating during that day. If you do 16 hours of fasting, you're restricting the time of eating for 8 hours. If you do 20 hours fasting, you're restricting the time of eating for 4 hours. And if you're doing 1 meal a day, we call it OMAD. Basically, you're just eating that period. So TRE, time-restricted eating, is a description of how much you're limiting the time per day of eating. And it's part of intermittent fasting, which goes all the way to 2 days. And help the intermittent fasting part help people with losing a little bit of weight, optimizing a little bit their metabolism. And the biggest myth probably we need to dismantle today is a lot of people thought that you get autophagy doing intermittent fasting, meaning you're rejuvenating your cells with a 16 or an 18-hour time-restricted eating. And that, again, because you still have glycogen, you still have fat, you still have reserve, you're not depleted, you're not in a stress so that the cells rejuvenate. And that's one of the biggest mistake or and again, going back to marketing and fake thought leadership, that a lot of people, made a big propaganda that if you do 16 or 20 hours of fasting, you're boosting autophagy throughout the body. That doesn't happen. It has to go for a couple of days before the body is in crisis and ask the cell to systematically go on autophagy.
Oh, thank you so much for the clarification, because as you said, I think there are a lot of myths out there, and that's good to get the answers from a real expert.
Yeah, no, science doesn't lie. They always say, I always in interviews, they're like, oh, different ideas. They are different ideas, but there's one truth. And science true science is there to help you get to the truth. This is what we believe in. This is why at our company, we have more MDs, PhDs, and dietitian proportionally to bigger than any sales or marketing team we have. So that says a lot about a company.
That's good. Now, regarding the fasting mimicking diet, let me try to summarize, because I'm definitely not an expert here. So the way I understand it is that there are these amino acids, particularly the branch chain amino acids like leucine, isoleucine, and valine, that play a significant role in activating the mTOR pathway and the IGF-1 signaling, which are pathways that promote cellular growth and proliferation, right? So what we want to do, or let's say that high activity of mTOR and the IGF-1 is associated with all the bad things you listed before, the aging, the cancer, the metabolic diseases and stuff like that. So that's not what we want. So the idea is that by limiting these amino acids, a fasting mimicking diet can help to reduce the mTOR and the IGF-1 pathways, and thus lead to autophagy and extend lifespan, right? Is that the gist of it?
It's one out of many factors. It's not. You're right on that specific pathway of mTOR. There's the PK, there's the RAF pass, because you can under trigger the TOR pathway, but if the body is recognizing food differently, so I'll zoom out and I'll give you a little bit of the full answer, and we'll zoom back to mTOR. So when you eat, on the systemic level, on the blood level, there are hormones that signals nutrition exists, which is insulin, IGF, and others, right? And so the first goal of a fasting mimicking diet should be not to spike insulin enough and not to spike IGF enough, so that the metabolism of the body says, okay, we should go from catabolic to anabolic. There's food systemically. So the first, and this is a very complicated task, is how can I give close to 1,000 calories to a person without over spiking insulin and IGF? So complex carb absorption, the right mix of fat and healthy fats and macros, both the proteins and the carbs. The timing of the day, and this is what took us again the 36 million in 12 years. In the morning, you have a different cortisol and insulin versus during the day versus during the night, and then you add taste to that, and you add shelf life to that. So it's a multi-dimensional thinking, but I'll simplify it into, we don't want to increase insulin and IGF in the body. Then when you go on a cellular level, you went directly on the cellular level, there are pathways that senses food, the radars of nutrition. We call them the nutrient sensing pathways. And one of them is the TOR. You have the PKA and the RAS pathways also. So you want to make sure those are not triggered. But you want to make sure that the cell is nourished at the same time, and the body is getting the carbs it needs and the proteins it needs, especially the essential proteins. So you got to mix all this together and add the factor of fluctuations in natural hormones and absorption and taste and shelf life. And then you get that. This is why it took this long, and this is why we call it a technology. We call it a Nutri technology. It's a real novel. And it's an oxymoron, fasting mimicking diet. You're eating to mimic fasting, and this is why the patents that we got over 100 patents. And a big thank you to actually the National Institute of Health, who has awarded over $20 million into the research, and to European governments and universities actually who have put over 14 million euros into this to be able to get to this point. This is a true technology that's really changing people's life now.
Yeah, for sure. Now we have a question from the audience, because not everyone might be able to use your products. So what can people do if they want to kind of hack this in their own diet? So should they try to lower the intake of especially those branched chain amino acids and maybe methionine, or all kinds of, like, all the amino acids?
Not at all. That's a disaster. What you're just saying is a disaster, because you're just telling people to eat less essential amino acid and therefore trying to mimic. It's the opposite. You should never deplete your body out of those. You should just do the fasting mimicking diet for 5 days. We made it cheaper than food. It's $150, and the average for food, drinks, pills, and for 5 days, which is a $10 per meal, which is now almost equal to a croissant or an espresso in the US. Was at I don't want to name, we made it equal to food. Actually, you save money because you're not cooking or working. I cannot recommend you do anything else to mimic it. A lot of hospitals tried, because if you do a mistake and you recognize the food, then you're just eating a super low calorie diet, which is not beneficial. Then you're just, like you said, you're depleting branched chain amino acid, you're depleting carbs. So it's a very, very sensitive, precise formulation that if people try to do at home with one mistake, they're just going on a very low calorie diet, and that's not the purpose in here. And definitely we don't want them to cook a low protein, low carb diet just to eat it and deplete their body over a period of time.
Right. So you mentioned that your product is like 5-day, like a 5-day diet program thing.
Yeah.
But what do you do after those 5 days? So is it just that you cycle through this?
Yeah. So
Really?
yeah, I wanted to also complete the answer, the previous question. It's very important we didn't talk about muscle, and this is why I react to the brain change. So actually, Prolon protects the fasting diet is the only diet that actually keeps the muscle function protected. And this is why the formulation should not be mitigated. I'll tell you why. So if you mimic truthfully fasting, you're mimicking, remember, it's a stress intervention. And the stress hormone in the body is a growth hormone. So when you do Prolon, the 5-day fasting mimicking diet, you have a high growth hormone because the body is feeling the stress. The cells are not recognizing the food. There's a stress factor. Growth hormone is high. The muscle now is being, and this naturally happens because this is all human evolution. And if there's no food, the body's not going to compromise the muscle. In the first stage, you want to push the muscle to go and walk and find the next fruit or hunt another animal, etc. Now with Prolon, because you're fasting with nutrition, there is nutrients coming to the muscle, and there's rejuvenation happening after day 3 to the muscle. So what we see with Prolon is we call it a fat preferential weight loss. You're losing weight from fat, and you're protecting muscle. We call this new concept weight care, because we believe this is the right way to lose weight. If you do the Ozempics and the Wegovy's and the GLP-1s, you're losing muscle. 25% of the weight loss is muscle. If you go on chronic calorie restriction or water fasting, you're losing muscle. What we call weight care is a new concept, is how can I use fat while protecting my muscle and metabolism? And this is why I kind of was very sensitive to the formulation, because if you go on a low-calorie diet, if the cells recognize the food and you're not fasting mimicking any longer, you don't increase growth hormone, you're just being in depletion, and then you deplete the muscle. And this is what every low-calorie diet does. You end up losing metabolic rate and muscle and fat, and then the day you stop it, you gain back the fat fast because the engine is weaker. Now the engine of the body is weaker, the muscle is weaker. So this is a critical success factor in here.
Yeah, that brings me to another question from the audience. And I think you already kind of gave the answer, because the people were interested in how do you mimic fasting while also maintaining some level of anabolic signaling for muscle growth? Because that's exactly what they are worried about, like losing muscle mass through this diet.
Yeah, we just answered it. We have 2 clinical trials on protecting lean body mass. We actually have a patent on that. And it's exactly the trio that I explained is you need the stress of fasting. You don't need the depletion of a low-calorie diet. And you don't want water fast. So water fast, you lose muscle. Chronic calorie restriction, you lose muscle. Fasting mimicking diet, you have the trio of growth hormone is being pushed as a stress hormone, the muscle being nourished, and the muscle cells getting rejuvenated with autophagy. This is what protects the muscle. And this is a big secret. This is how with diabetes and prediabetes, a lot of our clinical trials, we have one in Leiden and one in a German university, by the way. And one studied 6 months of fasting mimicking diet, so 5 days a month only for 6 months, and one for 12 months, 5 days a month only for 12 months. And they're showing 2/3 of the patient start dropping their medication in 6 months. 2/3.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
Well, it is a crazy result, but it's actually, if you think about it, diabetes type 2 is the disease of aging and overeating and losing muscle, right? How you get diabetes type 2. You start aging, you lose muscle, you overeat, you store fat, insulin resistance, and then diabetes. Think about that system, how you can reverse it in the best way. If it's the disease of aging and overeating, fasting is right. So every time we talk to endocrinologists, and now we have over 15,000 doctors registered with us, just to let you know how big this is, the credibility behind the science. But they all are like, wow, is that possible? Can really food be like? Diabetes is the disease of aging, muscle loss, and overweight. And guess what? Can take you super fast away from that is the opposite, is you mimic fasting, right? And then everyone was like, wow, it makes sense. Was commenting on when you said it's crazy. It is crazy, but it's actually crazy what we're doing now, keeping
True.
not intervening on the nutrition of a diabetic patient. It's just putting them on pills. And finally, as you mentioned, we're tackling the root cause of the disease. When I went to med school, and they told us like diabetes has genetic predisposition, which is true, but it's super tiny. Otherwise, you know, when you look at the pictures 40, 50, 60 years ago of people in Berlin or in New York, I mean, they were skinny. They were not diabetic. They didn't look diabetic, in most cases. So it's not that the genetic predisposition is there, but it's not the main factor. The main factor is unhealthy aging, overeating, and losing muscle. These are the true reasons behind the lifestyle-induced type 2 diabetes. And fasting mimicking diet is poised to support the muscle, support metabolism, reverse the bioage of the cells, and put the body into depletion so that insulin resistance goes down pretty fast.
Now that almost sounds too good to be true. So are there any risks associated, and who should maybe not be on the fasting diet?
There are 4 categories of people that should be cautious with the fasting or not do it, right? If you're already frail, if your BMI is below 18 and a half, you're already frail, you don't want to go and mimic fasting. If you're above age 70, right, you might have some comorbidities, or you might have a lot of other health conditions that you want to, or taking special medicine for blood pressure, etc. You don't want to do the fasting mimicking diet unless you talk to your doctor. So we have tested, of course, on the elderly, the fasting mimicking diet, but we do it with supervision of a doctor. If you're growing, right, something, if you're pregnant, if you're lactating, you have to produce milk, you don't want to be in deprivation, you don't want to be in a fasting mimicking. And like every food, number 4, if you have allergies to the ingredients, if you're allergic to any of the plant-based ingredients in Prolon, there are 77 of those, mainly premium nuts, macadamia, almonds, pecan. These are some of the main ingredients. And then you should not do like any other product if you're allergic to the ingredients.
Sure. Yeah, I probably fall into that first category because I'm much more worried about losing weight than gaining weight.
Yeah.
And when I do something like, I don't do long fast or anything. I do more of the maybe time restricted eating, like 12 hours in between meals or something like that. But I've experimented with, say, 14 to 16 hours of fasting, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But what I notice is that my sleep suffers, my mood suffers, I have no energy, and I can also feel that it affects my hormone system. So what are your clients, do they see any of those symptoms as well, or does that not happen on this fasting mimicking diet?
During the 5 days, there are some, remember the cells are transitioning and metabolism is transitioning. A lot of people report that I feel high, especially on day 4 and 5, and do not need sleep at night. So we do have that. We have energy actually is one of the positives. So this is the oxymoron with the fasting mimicking diet. You're protecting muscle and you're losing fat, and you're feeling empowered with that. This is the performance, and the energy actually is higher on most surveys that we do. Performance and energy are higher. Of course, not on day 3 when you're transitioning, but I'm saying after day 5 and day 6, when you're done with the diet, you feel the happiness with statistically significant confidence, energy, and performance. These are the most on surveys statistically significant empowerments. And between day 1 and 5, when you're doing the fasting mimicking diet, some people report either light sleep or not needing to sleep. Some people report a little bit of fatigue on day 3, especially what we call them metabolically inflexible, meaning they haven't fasted before, they haven't done a keto before, or they haven't basically had in their life to move from source of carb and protein source of energy to ketone source of energy. It's like, to explain it in an easy way, is if the first time you go to a gym after a year of not going to the gym, you're going to feel that pain. This is the first, and then when you do it again, you don't feel that pain. We recommend people do it 3 times per year. We just published in Nature a few months ago. Nature is the #1 science journal of the world. We have, I think, 6 or 7 papers in Nature. And we just published that if you do Prolon 3 times per year, your bio-age score decreases by 2.5 years.
Whoa.
This is
amazing.
And if you do it between age 50 and 70, 3 times per year, every year, and to the audience here, 15 days out of a year is not big of a sacrifice. So this is something most of us could do. But if you do it between age 50 and 70 consistently 3 times per year, your bio-age score is reduced by 11.5 years.
Whoa.
So 2.5 on the first time, and then you have a diminished return on revenue. You end up improving bio-age by 11.5 years. And this is a Nature paper. We're not, and it took a while for Nature to accept it, to verify the data. It took a long time, but we partnered with Yale and USC on this paper, and we plugged in the results of the Prolon changes on metabolism into a bio-age score, and this is how we got to the results.
That sounds wonderful. I mean, that's really a big achievement, and thank you so much for all the important work that you're doing.
No, I mean, again, appreciate it, and I for people who want to learn more about everything we talked about today, there's a lot of concepts today. We talked intermittent fasting, prolonged fasting, what is a longevity diet, and what to eat after Prolon. I still want to answer that one, but there's our founder, Walter Longo, Professor Walter Longo, who's the head of the Longevity Institute at USC, has published a book called The Longevity Diet. It was an Amazon bestseller. I think sold over 1 or 2 million copies. It's a 2018 book. So at that time, a lot of the trials were not out yet, but the book still lays out the concept of what is good and not good about fasting, what is the fasting mimicking diet, what to eat for longevity, and if you have a health condition, a chapter on diabetes, on cancer, what to eat for that health condition. And this is probably the only book I know of that uses preclinical and clinical trials to just define what the author is talking about rather than personal experiences or anecdotal experiences. So the Longevity Diet book, heavily recommended for folks listening to us to buy it and read it.
Oh, thank you so much for the recommendation. I'll definitely have to check that one out. Now, before you go, I'm also always curious about your own diet and exercise routines. And can you just walk us through a typical day in your life? Like, what are your success habits?
So what I do, I try to do the circadian fasting every day, the 12 hours. You mentioned that. A lot of centenarians that we study, people living 100 and beyond, they practice what I call a front-ended intermittent circadian fasting. What does that mean, front-ended? Meaning they don't stay late at night and they eat late and then they starve themselves throughout the day, the next day, all the way to the afternoon. And unfortunately, a lot of intermittent fasters do that. And that's an unhealthy way of doing intermittent fasting. If you eat late at night and then you stay all day next day, you're just going the opposite way. At night, you don't need the food, you're sleeping. During the day, you need the food. So it's important to do your dinner 6, 7, 8 p.m., spend another 12 to 14 hours max, and then have your breakfast. We still recommend having breakfast. So it's a merger of intermittent fasting, front-ended plus breakfast, because in the morning, your brain needs to be fed. Your heart is pumping, needs to be fed. The kidneys, the essential organs. You don't want to compromise essential organs. And you want to follow the circadian rhythm and the circadian hormones, right? There's a reason why insulin goes up in the morning, because the body expects food. And if there's no food, you're just pulling carbs away and you feel less energetic, and you're going to work or to the gym and you underperform, and then you overeat at night, you binge eat because you starve yourself during the day. It's unfortunately a big mistake. One of the biggest advice I would give entrepreneurs is get your dinner early and do more work in the morning rather than late. Because you stay up at night, that used to be my biggest mistake. I used to stay up, especially when you launch companies, you're too busy, you're too stressed. When you're busy and stressed late at night, you're eating. And when you eat late at night, you say, okay, you wake up, oh, I'm not a breakfast eater, I don't like breakfast. You're not a breakfast eater because you had reflux during the night and you overate during the night, and you wake up not even having the appetite for it. And you don't need it because you 8, 6, 7, whatever, 9 hours ago when you slept. So these are unhealthy signs. You want to actually have your dinner early. You want to do some work when your brain is at its best performance in the morning. and then have your breakfast, 1-2 hours after you're up. You will have an appetite if you ate early the day before. So that's a big thing for me. And I used to do it wrong, and now I do it the right way. I also use a lot of my meetings, even if they're on Teams or Zoom, if I can just go off screen and walk and put pods. This is one of the best to reach my 10,000 steps. Is what I do the most is the phone calls while walking. One of my secrets: every time I take an office, I take a big office. Not out of ego, but just needing to walk. I really need to walk while being on calls. Otherwise, and some entrepreneurs try to do it on a cycling machine or a, but I feel like that movement disturbs me a little bit. And if you walk a long time on a fixed machine, there are studies that show, lower back pain. So I try to just walk in my office, walk in the hallway, stay at a good distance from my phone and into the. On my diet, I'm mainly pescatarian, flexitarian, so plant-based, mostly fish 2-3 times a week. I still eat meat, twice, 2 to 3 times a month. So I'm a flexitarian basically mostly, which is a longevity diet. We believe this is where the and this could be a full session because it depends on your age. We'd like you to be a little bit lower on the animal source of protein and spiking IGF when you're 40 to 65. That's the pre-disease age. And then after age 65, when you start having a little bit of less absorption power and muscle becomes an organ of longevity, we recommend you eat a little bit more protein at that time. So it's a full discussion at another webinar or podcast. But
yes.
I'm in between the 40 to 65, so I try to limit the animal source of protein and get most of my proteins from plant-based sources, beans and nuts, and also fish and rarely meat. I do supplement. We have a longevity protein drink that we call the L-protein. I love that because it's all plant-based sources of protein in it. It complements my need for proteins during the day.
Thank you so much for sharing. I feel super validated because I'm basically doing something very similar to what you're doing. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners today?
I hope that, if anything today, that we two things that we learned is, fasting is an important part of life. People always ask me, is that a fad? Is that a new thing? What's new in the last 40 years is eating all the time. What's not new is eating and fasting, right? Because this is how every animal species and humans lived for tens and tens of thousands of years. There was some food, especially in the summer, and there was no food or rarely some food in the winter. And the cyclicity of life is very important. It's like everything. Like you watch a Formula One car race, they do a pit stop to go and check and change the oil and change the tires, and then the car goes back more powerful and lasts longer, right? That's the healthier, longer concept. Your laptop after 5-6 days needs to restart, needs to break. Everything in life needs that little bit of cyclicity so that you don't always stack fat and you don't always stack calories and you don't always bring toxins to the body and spoil the cells and then become diabetic and cancerous and Alzheimer's. So fasting is it's not a new concept. It's a new science that proving something that was within our genetics and epigenetics and human evolution that we lost. We lost this doctor from inside. We lost the audit, the self-check, the doctor from within, and you need to bring it back. The next final recommendation here is important to do 2 or 3 times a year, a big audit, a big rejuvenation, which is the 5 days. Because when you do intermittent fasting, you're creating a balance, a daily balance, but you're not putting pressure to fix. And the pressure to fix and to heal and to put the system in check is important for longevity. This is where the fasting mimicking diet, this is where we sacrificed 25 years to get here today, and we put a lot of science to prove that this is important. Humans in the winter went multiple days with less food or low food or no food, and that was important. That was important to put the chronic disease in check and prevention in check. Now we eat all the time, and we don't. It's like having a car in a race that cannot take any pit stop. It's just gonna hit something wrong pretty soon. So make sure you do your pit stops. And this is not just food. It's food, it's staying on purpose, it stays less stress, is good sleep, and good social capital as well. All these are the pillars of longevity. They're very important for every entrepreneur to keep in mind and to be off the micro stress of the day and stay rejuvenated, healthy, on target, on purpose.
So true. It's all about finding that balance.
Yes.
Where can the listeners find you online if they would like to learn more about you and or your company?
About me, I'm mainly on LinkedIn. Dr. Joseph Antoun. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm getting my socials. So same Dr. Joseph Antoun on other social. My team is getting me set up there as well. If you want to read more about the company, L-Nutra, go to lnutra.com, l-nutra.com. And if you want to learn about specifically the fasting mimicking diet, you can go to prolonlife.com, Prolon life.com. This is where you can specifically read about Prolon in the 5 days. And if you want to buy it, you can buy it on that platform.
Fantastic. Joseph, thank you so much for sharing all those tips and insights with us today. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Claudia.
Take care and talk soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for new episodes and more updates on my Feel the Magic Challenge. If you want to follow along and boost your energy and reduce your stress like I have, check out Magic Mind via the link in the description. You can get up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase with code ClaudiaG20. Let's see what 30 days of Magic Mind can do for you. I know we are all different, and what works for one person does not necessarily work equally well for somebody else. So I would love to hear your honest experiences. I'm confident that you will love the results. But even if you don't, there's no risk, since Magic Mind offers to refund 100%, no questions asked, for 100 days after buying. So enjoy. Thanks again for listening. Stay tuned and talk to you soon. Bye.